Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's Tractor Talk, we're going to be talking with the legendary Kubota G Series garden tractors.
Stay tuned.
So if you didn't see last week's video where we talked about young Gonchiro Kubota, who started the Kubota Corporation back in the late 1890s, we certainly recommend that you check that out. But today's video is going to be all about one of the best garden tractor lines ever, the G Series. So there was really 5 main models in the G Series line. You could argue there's 4, but there's really 5 because there was the G3200, the G4200 came in 2 different variants, and then there was the G5200, G6200. And actually, my brother happens to have the largest top model, the G6200, which we're going to get into in just a minute.
And also, real quick to keep in mind, today's video we're going to be talking about the original square hood G Series, not to be confused with the round hood G Series of the 90s and 2000s. Today we'll be talking about the square hood ones from the 80s.
I just can't get enough of those classic 80s square lines, can you?
Me neither. There's just something about, well, the lines, just the
It's not just tractors either, like even pickup trucks. I greatly prefer square body styles over round styles. I think a lot of people agree. If you do agree, please let us know in the comments below. So the smallest of the Kubota brothers, the runt of the litter, the G3200, would have featured 10 horsepower, 2-cylinder diesel engine, and it was made between 1983 and 1988.
So the 3200 being the smallest was only offered with a gear transmission. There wasn't a hydrostatic option available. So it was a 3-speed gear transmission and a category 0 3-point hitch.
I believe it had a 2.1 gallon fuel tank, 23 by 10.5 by 12 rear tires, and 16 by 6.5 by 8 fronts.
And so it's also important to note that, like we said in last week's video, if you didn't see it, all of the Kubota tractors had the legendary Kubota diesels, including even the smallest G Series, that they were all diesels.
I mean, these things just ran like a smooth running top.
Did they?
Gotta stop with this stuff.
Did they?
So as far as dimensions go, this tractor would have been about 71 inches long or just under 6 feet. It was 40 inches wide, 44 inches tall to the steering wheel, and it had just under 7 inches of ground clearance.
So that would have been pretty comparable to something like my tractor.
Yeah. So what did it offer for attachments for this 3200?
So offered a few different attachments. It came with either a 40 or a 44-inch mower deck, a 46 or a 48-inch snow plow, and it even came with a 38-inch snow blower.
Which makes me wonder, was this 38-inch snow blower really a Case snowcaster?
Really?
Case did make snow blowers for Kubota. And I actually mentioned that in this video.
So the next one up in the litter would have been the G4200. So it would have been made from 1984 to 1990, featuring a 12-cylinder Kubota.
12 cylinders? Holy shit.
Featuring a 12-horsepower, 2-cylinder Kubota diesel engine. And the big advancement for this one would have been that it was available with either a gear transmission or as a hydrostatic.
So I have to imagine hydrostatic probably would have been the more popular option, but if you know someone that has the gear option and they like it, let us know.
Well, yeah, and imagine it'd be like cars that they're still made with both automatics and manuals, but at least here in the United States, that the automatic would have been the preferred option.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of the garden tractor brands from back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, seems like the hydrostatics are often kind of like the more premier garden tractors in their lines. So if you had like a super garden tractor, almost always had a hydrostatic transmission, which tells me that was considered a better option. And you can see this by the original prices of these 4200s.
Oh, yeah.
The gear option would have been $3,950. The hydrostatic option would have been
$4,350. So basically a 10% increase.
$400 was a lot in 1984. But if you wanted a hydrostatic transmission, that's what you had to cough up.
God. You said that so over the top.
So moving on up the line, we had the G5200. This is the second biggest offering, and the huge change for this tractor was not only that it had a bigger 14 horsepower engine, but it was 3 cylinders now instead of 2. So you want to talk about smooth running, you got to talk about a 3-cylinder garden tractor engine.
Oh, yeah. And so there's something kind of interesting about this is that with the 3200 it was only gear. With the 4200 it was either gear or hydrostatic. But with the 52 and 6200s they were exclusively hydrostatics. You no longer even had the option of a gear transmission.
Which tells me gear models did not sell nearly as well as hydrostatic. Despite being $400 cheaper in 1984, I'm willing to bet the hydrostatics vastly outsold their geared brothers. Just like the 4200, this was made from 1984 until 1990. And other than that, it was quite similar in specs to its two smaller brothers.
However, the big difference is because of the larger power plant and the extra cylinder, you could now get a 48-inch mower deck and a 46-inch snowblower, whereas the 32 and 4200s only went up to a 44-inch mowing deck and a 38-inch snowblower, respectively.
So quite a bit bigger implements for quite a bit bigger of a tractor. Just like the 3200 and 4200, you could either get a manual or hydraulic lift to raise and lower your implements. I would have chosen hydraulic. So if you're not familiar, you can usually you have like what you call an Armstrong lift. You have a big lever that comes up on the side of you, and that's how you lower and raise your mower deck or your plow. Whereas hydraulic, you can just press a button or a pedal and get on your business.
Yeah.
I mean, you would get bigger arms from doing the manual, so I don't know. It's a toss-up. What would you choose?
Forearm gains or time saved? What do I want?
So the largest brother of the family would have been the huge G6200. This featured a massive 16 horsepower, 3-cylinder Kubota diesel that again ran as smooth as silk. And this was only available, as Brett mentioned earlier, in a hydrostatic version.
And the other thing is this was only available from 1986 to 1990, so it was only available for a 5-year run.
And my brother actually happens to have one of these G6200s. He's had it for just about 20 years. I believe he bought it back in like 2006. So 19 years, and I'll tell you what, he really, really loves it. I've operated it a few times mowing grass, and the hydrostatic transmission just smooth as silk. The engine just sips the fuel, and it's just a really, really good tractor and a good mower.
It is an amazing machine.
So something interesting, when it debuted, it was only around $5,480 back in like 1987-ish. But by 2 years later in 1989, the price had risen to $6,400, which tells me they had no problem selling these big 6200s, and they knew they could get a little more coin. There is one more thing, a little bit of a surprise. Brett doesn't know about this, that we're going to talk about with these original G-Series Kubotas. And one of the reasons I like them so much is because of their emblem.
The square bull on the hood?
So that's what most people think. They have this little square, silvery colored bull, but when you look at the later tractors that Kubota offered, they changed the logo drastically and they got rid of this bull. By the way, if you enjoy animal-related tractors, we think you'll really enjoy the Sato line of tractors. Check it out. But going back to the bull, I have a theory. Now, if you Google this and you start looking at different theories, you'll see that there's a lot of them out there. There's people that think that Kubota in Japanese means little bull, which although that would be really cool if it was true, when you Google it, it actually means sunken rice paddy, the word Kubota, which tells me that the bull was not because of their surname. I think the reason that they had the bull was because back in this time, water buffaloes were huge in Japan. The water buffalo, a majestic animal, really helped cultivate the Japanese soils and landscape, and they transformed Japan at a time before machinery really existed, and they continue to use them in this day.
So if you really think about it, the square bull is looking back on what Kubota in theory would have been before, which was a bull.
And Kubota is kind of like a mechanicalized version of a water buffalo.
Hence why it's the silver.
Pretty good theory, I think.
It's a pretty good theory.
Another interesting fact about the water buffalo is I believe 96% of the population of water buffalo live in Asia.
Really?
96% of the Earth's population of water buffalo live in Asia.
That's a pretty big number.
So let us know. Compare the picture of Kubota's original logo to a water buffalo. Let us know if you think we're right. Certainly hope you guys enjoyed this fun-filled video, informative. on the G Series line of Kubota tractors, one of the best garden tractor lines they've ever had. Let us know if you have one, if you've seen one, what you think. See you next time.